Hello, everybody, and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Yes, welcome back, everybody. We're so happy to have you here. So welcome. If you find yourself maybe just finishing up the brand new Fantastic Four First Steps movie, and you're like, oh my god, I really just want to sit down and talk to someone about my ranking of all the Fantastic Four movies that I've seen and experienced. Well, buddy, we have found each other in the exact same place and time in our lives because that's what we're about to do here. So yes, let's talk about some rankings for the Fantastic Four. And on the channel, I've just finished up kind of covering all of the Fantastic Four movies. I did not cover that 1994 one that I believe was unreleased, and I believe the studio only made it just to make sure that they could hold on to the rights for the Fantastic Four characters, and it never came out. I think it's free on YouTube. I don't know. I didn't feel like sitting through that one. I've heard nothing but awful things about it, so I didn't feel like watching that. ZakIsCinema is very sorry here, but we're going to be covering 4 Fantastic Four movies in this ranking here. These were all first-time watches for me, but if you want some of my more in-depth thoughts, I do have reviews and videos for all the movies that we're going to be talking about. So these are just going to be kind of brief overviews when I rank these from worst to best. So yeah, let's just hop into it here. We're going to be starting off in our last place, the worst Fantastic Four movie. Number 4 is going to be Fantastic Four 2015. So this Fantastic Four movie was honestly, I was probably most excited to check this one out just because I've never heard anyone say anything positive about this movie. It is so famous for how infamously horrible it really is and how awful the movie and portrayal of all the characters are. So I was so excited checking this one out, just going into it with such low expectations. I was hoping to get a cool new guilty pleasure, or maybe I'd be a little bit surprised and be like, okay, like I see people's complaints, but I don't think it's that bad. However, when I got done watching it, it unfortunately was one of the worst superhero movies I've ever seen, and pretty much just as bad as I've heard since its release. It's so frustrating watching this movie because unfortunately not a lot happens. This movie has a big montage problem, and even when the interesting stuff happens, it's not all that interesting and just kind of boring. This movie spends the first 30-40 minutes setting up our Fantastic Four, yet we still don't know anything about them. We're not invested at all into their group or character dynamics whatsoever. Pretty much montages through all that. It goes through a lot of boring scientific stuff that is really just not captivating or interesting at all. When something does happen and the group of characters start acting stupid and go off to this green planet to just start investigating stuff because they're mad that they can't go on the trip, and all these characters are just so stupid because as soon as they get to that planet, they all act like kids in a museum on a field trip, just wandering off, touching shit, and then acting surprised when something horrible happens. Like at one point, Von Doom just sticks his hand into this green energy pool and is surprised when it starts hurting him, and the planet just all of a sudden starts erupting around him, and then that's how they all get their powers and everything. So and this doesn't happen, like I said, until around 45 minutes into the movie. So we don't even see the Fantastic Four turn into the Fantastic Four until 60 to 70% of the way through the movie. And then once the Fantastic Four turn into the Fantastic Four, you get nothing of the team. They're pretty much separated the whole movie until the last final battle in the last 5 minutes. But again, you don't care about these characters. They're not really doing anything interesting. Just the government is holding them captive to make them into war weapons and doing their little government plotting for them so they don't have to. So none of that is interesting. interesting. They butcher the character of Reed Richards, portrayed by Miles Teller, where Reed Richards actually leaves the group to try and find a cure, but doesn't go back to help or rescue any of them. He instead gets captured, then they all kind of just forgive him and kind of move on, but the leader of the group is missing for half the fucking movie. And then the ending is just absolute bullshit, where they all go back to that green planet. Turns out Von Doom is now Dr. Doom. He cares so much about this planet that we haven't seen him do anything with, and like I said, the whole movie has no villain until the last 10 minutes, until Dr. Doom shows up, and he shows up in the last 20 minutes, and then they defeat him about 10 minutes later after Reed Richards gives some half-assed monotone speech that really just pumps up the Fantastic Four to kick Dr. Doom into his beam thingy, and that's how they defeat him. The ending battle all looks like shit. None of it looks very, very well done. It's just all done on green screens and everything that just don't look very good, and none of it is that interesting. So overall, this movie is just boring. Not a lot happens, and they totally waste all of the Fantastic Four characters, and what makes these movies special is that group dynamic, that family dynamic, and they don't have any of it. It's a superhero origin story without any character development, team building, action, or adventure that makes you care for the story or characters. So it just ends up being a boring, forgettable, awful movie. So easily last place, we got Fantastic Four 2015. But coming in at my number 3 spot is going to be Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer. So like I said, all these were first-time watches for me, and when I got done finished watching the first 2005 one, when I started this one, I was so happy and excited that all of the special effects, the green screen, just the size and scope and budget of this movie all seemed and got a significant bump where it really translates on the screen here. All of it holds up much, much better than our first one did. So I was happy to see that. You get bigger action set pieces in this one. The stakes feel way higher, and you get bigger action set pieces of all the Fantastic Four characters working together that I think work really well in this movie. I think this movie has a fun, almost self-aware tone, but still takes itself pretty serious. I love the group dynamic and the family dynamic you get in this movie, and Chris Evans is a huge positive in these original Fantastic Four movies, where I think he just plays such a likable douchebag that's charming in some ways, but also an asshole in some ways too, and I think he helps elevate this movie to really become that fun kind of superhero movie. However, it is in my number 3 spot just because the villains and story are a little disappointing with this movie. The Silver Surfer is, like I said in my review, is just so interesting with how complicated he is, complex, and he feels very conflicted in what he's doing and in what he's doing for Galactus. But they don't really take the time to set that up or explore that all that much. The Silver Surfer just kind of changes sides after talking with Jessica Alba for a couple minutes, which, I mean, I get. I would change my whole moral compass for Jessica Alba as well on a dime. I would do anything for her. But when you have a villain that switches sides so quick like that, it kind of removes all its complex stuff that you set up with how he's unsure of how he feels if he just switches sides like that. And then at the end, when he of course saves the day and comes in at the third act, I feel like he just defeats Galactus way too easily and blasts him with a beam from his surfboard, or I think from his chest area or something we haven't seen him do before. So then that just leaves me with the question, well, if you could really just defeat him kind of pretty easily, why were you just doing whatever he asked. So that was very, very disappointing. And I hate how they bring back Doctor Doom in this movie. So I like that there's a continuity between the two, and I like an ongoing villain presence, but the stuff they do with him is just so frustrating and disappointing. He comes back into the movie, he's almost trusted very easily, where the government says he needs to help out and everything because he had a contact with the Silver Surfer. They leave him alone in the scientific labs and everything, just doing his own thing. Nobody's, making sure he doesn't turn villainous again. And of course, by the third act, he turns villainous again. And his plan makes no sense with how he is filling in that role of the Silver Surfer, and I just don't know what he was thinking because he's never met Galactus before, doesn't really know who Galactus is. So did he just think Galactus was going to be best buddies with him when he finally shows up in the third act? And then they defeat Doctor Doom again very, very easily here, where I forget exactly how it plays out, but I know they kick him into a body of water at the end. So it just felt like they were really building him and building him up to be this big threat, and they don't really do anything with him, so he just kind of seems like a bit of a pussy in both of these movies, so that's a little frustrating. But overall, it's an early superhero movie that is so watchable still. It's still fun, just it's hard to take too serious, and there's some choices there that just leave me kind of disappointed and frustrated because I think there was a lot more they could have done. So yeah, my number 3, we got Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. But coming in my number 2 spot, we got Fantastic Four 2005, the OG original one, if we're not counting the 1994 adaptation. And I think one of my favorite things about this movie is just how it bleeds that early 2000s charm and vibe. Like I said in my review, it put me back into that time and place where I'm just sitting on the living room carpet, just watching my superhero stuff on my TV, just slightly too close to the TV, so I kind of have to look up, but there's nothing but just enjoyment filling my soul. Where this movie just reminds me of times like that, and it's so interesting and fun going back to early comic book movies where they were still trying to figure it out. They weren't really sure how to get the formula right. They didn't really have the budget or technology to pull these off just yet. And even though the story and how it plays out is kind of cliche, that unique vibe of them figuring out how to do a superhero movie in this very early incarnation of a superhero team-up movie, it just helps to make the movie feel unique and different, almost a new level of appreciation I have for it after growing up with the MCU and going back before the MCU was really a thing. Like I said earlier, Chris Evans is terrific in this movie. I love him so much. I love his great introduction of when he's on the motorcycle and making out with that girl in a Mustang driving down the highway. It's one of the best character introductions I think I've ever seen, ever. And I love origin stories, and I think you get a really good origin story in this movie, where the cool thing about the Fantastic Four is once they get their powers and have their accident, each of our characters almost have their own unique little Spider-Man moment where they realize that their accident caused changes to themselves and now they have these powers. So you get 4 scenes of them figuring out their powers, realizing they have powers, and their reactions to that. So I always love that in origin stories, and I like how each character kind of gets their own little moment with that in this movie. And I think overall, just the core 4 of the Fantastic Four, I think have a really good dynamic. I think in my next one that I'm going to be talking about, I think they do more with that family dynamic, but in this movie I think they have a good group dynamic where you get a bunch of fun, interesting scenes of them trying to work together here. But I would say it's coming in at my number 2 spot just because I don't think the villain of Doctor Doom was portrayed all that well, unfortunately. He is in the accident as well, but he's just evil because I think at one point he lost a couple board members and he's losing his company and losing funding, so he turns evil. He said something about never having this much power. Now I have infinite supply of power, so I'm just gonna use it for baddie activities. So there's not a whole lot there. They could have done more with his conflict with Reed Richards since they knew each other. I was hoping they'd do a little bit more there. And the third act is just so limited with its time and budget and effects they could do back then, where it's just very lame and just very, very quiet third act where they defeat Doctor Doom by busting open a fire hydrant and like freezing him. So it's just, it has its limitations, unfortunately, but not a bad movie in any way. I do enjoy, these original Fantastic Four movies. I think the only one I hate and would never watch again is my last place one, the 2015 one. But yeah, coming in at number 2, we got Fantastic Four 2005. But yes, that really only leaves one left. So my number 1, we got the Fantastic Four First Steps, our brand new Fantastic Four. Now, sure, could this be recency bias? Sure. Could it be that I didn't grow up with any of the other ones and these were all first-time watches and I'm not a big comic reader? Sure. But overall, I think almost easily this new one comes in at number 1, at least to me. And like I said, those original Fantastic Four movies aren't as bad as I thought they would be. I wouldn't mind rewatching them, but if I were to ever be in the mood for a Fantastic Four movie, this new one is the one that I'm going to want to watch again and the one that I would, without hesitation, grab off my shelf here. My favorite part of this movie is just the futuristic but retro 1960s world that they create, where you get these conflicting tones almost of this crazy technology and technology infused with older 1960s retro stuff, and then you also get the old school stuff. And I just love the unique vibe and tone that really creates and makes it stand out on its own. I think it helps ground this over-the-top sci-fi adventure. And I think my favorite part of this is the first Fantastic Four movie, at least to me, where they not only nail that group dynamic and aspect, but they nail the family that is the Fantastic Four. Like, this isn't just another group team-up movie. This is a family superhero movie, very similar to The Incredibles. And I think this is the only movie here that's really did that super, super well. I think the effects and special effects and green screens and all the characters' powers and abilities all look fantastic. There wasn't any too noticeable weak CGI. Galactus in this movie is significantly better. He's portrayed visually better, just on a grand scale, and they actually show him and he sounds so cool. And I think this movie is just a fun sci-fi adventure where it's not an action superhero movie. It's more about this family working together, facing the pressure from the outside world and doing research and scientific stuff to help them in their couple of battles. So I thought that was very unique and different as well. And I didn't touch on it in my review too much, but I like how that it didn't try to do the overly quippy Marvel stuff. It's definitely in here, but it's significantly toned down because unfortunately none of the humor that they went for worked for me. But I'm just so happy that they really kind of toned it down and really took itself a little bit more serious. I would say my issues here are unfortunately very similar to The Rise of the Silver Surfer, where I don't think the Silver Surfer was portrayed to the best of its ability, and Galactus just ultimately is a really just bigger baddie that just wants to consume the earth. And it's frustrating because they set up very interesting things with the Silver Surfer, but don't really play those out or push it to its limits where it could be very interesting. You could get another complex character in here that could really add a lot. So I feel like the movie almost kind of lacks an ongoing villain presence, which is a little frustrating, but I think it does kind of make up for it just with that team and family dynamic. Easily help carry this movie to where I felt very invested and just kind of wanted to see how things played out. So it's not a perfect movie. I said in my review, and I stick with it, that I was ultimately left just kind of disappointed. It just kind of played out exactly how I thought it would. Not necessarily meaning that it's bad, just one that I probably won't go back to as much. But for this ranking, if I had all these laid out in front of me, I'm easily going to go with this one here. So that is why it's coming in at my number 1 Fantastic Four movie. But you guys have my thoughts and ranking for the Fantastic Four movies. Like I said, I have videos, more in-depth videos on all of these movies, so feel free to check those out if you want some more of my thoughts there. But yeah, leave your ranking down below. I'm very curious to see. Give me that point of reference to, did you grow up with some of the older ones? Are these all first time watches for you as well, like they were for me? Let me know your ranking and your thoughts and feelings on all the Fantastic Four movies down below here. But you guys have my thoughts. I appreciate anybody watching my videos, so thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.